way to ring in 2020 with a good cause and still combining festivities and environmental stewardship, which is great. So I work for the Natural Resources Department for the town of Nantucket, and I am the Water Resource Specialist. The picture behind me is the Shellfish hatchery in which I work at, so a lot of you probably have seen it coming and going from Nantucket and wondering what those party lights are doing when you see them glowing at night. So those are actually dance party. We do 9 o'clock every night. Those are our LED lights. We're growing our algae to feed our shellfish that we use for stock enhancement of our waters. But what we do generally as a department is to protect and conserve and restore our native habitats on Nantucket. I specifically work on water quality, so I test monthly the Nantucket Harbor and Mattocket Harbor, as well as our Great Ponds. We also have initiatives for oyster restoration, again, like I said, stock enhancement of our scallops, and we do cohogs as well, and hopefully mussels soon, as well as protecting and monitoring our endangered bird species. Oh, sure, okay. How's this? Good? Okay, there we go, we'll do two. I was all excited, everyone heard me, and did it. But unfortunately, at least from my experience with sampling our waters, I have encountered what we're going to talk about today is seeing plastic. Either I've seen it around our shores or around our ponds, as well as in the water, ranging from probably water bottles generally, maybe some plastic bags, and then other trash such as soda cans or beer cans, unfortunately. So more than 10 million tons of plastic enter the ocean annually, and scientists predict that about 30 years from now, and 2050, that we will have more plastic in the water than fish. Plastics, when they break down, contribute to human health, as well as environmental health, and has impacts on societal economies. And 89% of our plastic in the ocean is actually from single-use items, such as water bottles. So this not only affects the quality of our waters, obviously for human use, but as well as the animals that live in or around our surrounding waters, because many of them ingest them thinking they're food or just interested in them, and seabirds, unfortunately, are affected by this greatly, as a lot of gut content analysis have shown stomachs filled with plastic particles. This is another big one, our beloved sea turtles. Juvenile sea turtles eat jellyfish, and when you look at this as a sea turtle, it does look like a jellyfish, but unfortunately that is a plastic bag. And I'm sure everyone has seen this viral video, but not only are they ingesting these plastics, but it is affecting them. For instance, this sea turtle, this was from a famous viral video with a straw. If you can see from the lower portion of the picture, it's about 6 inches long, that was in the nasal cavity of a sea turtle. So plastics not only end up, again, inside, but also surrounding them. So this can negatively impact their movement, which I'm sure we'll hear from further talks about our marine mammals and our sharks later on. But it can restrict their movement and obviously their respiration, etc. So the problem with plastics, aside from just floating in the water, as I said before, over time they begin to break down. They break down into smaller pieces, and when we have smaller pieces, we have microplastics. And then that gets even more difficult to remove from the water. So having these, you could collect, pick up with a net. When you start getting down to these microplastics, which are about less than 5 millimeters, that's pretty small, and it's going to take a lot of effort to remove these plastics when they break down to that size from our waters. So when they break down into these smaller pieces, I'm sure some of you have heard about that great large garbage patch the size of Texas in the Pacific. Has anyone heard about that? Yes. Okay. Well, so a lot of people think it's actually this big blob floating around that you can visibly see, but what it actually is it's a bunch of microplastics. So it's not all together like a big state, but it's spread out and it's as large as Texas. So there's a lot of different particles that are out in the water. Again, that people are trying to work on efforts to remove them, but I think the main point that we can all do to focus on is starting with our macroplastics, because without those in the water, we're not getting these tiny, tiny bits of plastic. So even organisms such as shellfish, so I talked about our hatchery, they are filter feeders. So when they're filtering the water, they are taking these microplastics or even nanoplastics and they're filtering and ingesting them. So when those plastics, again, break down, they have these chemical compounds that could disrupt their basic reproduction. So not only are we affecting the reproductive system of the shellfish, but I love oysters and scallops, and so when we ingest those, we are now also ingesting plastic. So unless you enjoy some plastic with your shellfish, we have some work to do. So prevention, like I said, by reducing plastic usage first, is the most effective management approach that we can do to mitigate plastic pollution. So what the Natural Resources Department and the town is doing to help stop this plastic pollution, well, one of them I'm sure you're familiar with. In 2018, we had the Stop the Straw campaign. This was partnered with Act Local, which was a town platform that forged a partnership between Remain Nantucket as well as Mariah Mitchell Association to ban our plastic straws, either to replace them with biodegradable ones or just get rid of them completely. So a lot of restaurants on the island have jumped on board with this, so that's really great. We offer, I know a lot of people complain about those the paper straws, so, after you have a sip, it gets pretty soggy, but what did we do before straws? We just drank out of cups. So we do have corn compostable straws now. They do take some time to degrade, but it's quite a bit time less than what you're seeing up here. For plastic straws, it's about 200 years. So that's quite a bit of time for it to remove from our environment and break down completely. So through our first initiative with the town to stop using single plastic use through our straws, we're also adopting a bylaw banning certain single-use plastics from commercial sale or distribution effective June 1st, 2020. So that will involve all of these right here, non-recyclable coffee pods, water bottles, drinking cups and lids, as well as non-compostable plates and utensils and some other ones as you see here. So that's great news. It sounds a little bit alarming to a lot of our distributors and restaurants, but we're on the right page and everyone is on board. So I'm very excited to be part of a team that is this gung-ho about helping stop plastic pollution. So as well as assisting with getting rid of our plastic pollution, this will also help protect our single-source aquifer, marine life, our aesthetic view just from having beautiful beaches. It will reduce litter, and it will also protect the health and the safety for now and our future generations. Another issue also is our landfill, which I'm sure all of you are aware of. Space on Nantucket, as well as other places, is rapidly diminishing, and it's becoming also quite expensive. So by reducing the quantity of our plastic waste, we're going to generate the lifespan of our landfill and hopefully reduce our economic and environmental costs of managing plastic pollution. So hopefully in my years to come, the only thing I'll be seeing is naturally occurring items on the shore, hopefully not the live scallop, because we had a lot of students this year. So thank you for all of you who came out and helped shovel those. That was quite a bit of effort. So the town of Nantucket and the Natural Resources Department work along with other organizations to help plastic pollution through environmental campaigns such as the ones I discussed, as well as doing our beach cleanups and through many educational and outreach events. So hopefully through all of our efforts, this island is great. It's a small island. Everyone works together to streamline our efforts. We can help work together as a whole to preserve and conserve our beautiful island and the island resources.
So with that, I'd be happy to have the next speaker come up and talk a little bit more about marine mammals. But thank you for your time, and if anyone else is coming, I will also be at the Under the Sea event, so come say hi. Thank you.
I think we have 2 seats down here. So whoever can't see, are you sitting in the
Yes.
Okay, so we have 1 seat.
Here, I'll
So we have a seat down here.
one seat.
Is there any other vacant seat anywhere? Anyway, so somebody who can't see, come on, it's a great seat, it's front row.
I don't mind.
All right, and in the back, can you hear all right? Okay.
I'm not with it right now, I'm just getting it set up.
No one wants to see?
All right, everybody. Hey, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. Very good turnout. I want to thank the Nantucket Hotel, Sharon, Mark, Gwen, Caroline, everybody for getting this together. And the volunteer team from the Marine Mammal Alliance. Thank you guys for being here too. I'm going to speak to the how and the why we are existing on this amazing little elbow of sand called Nantucket that was built on the backs of marine mammals. It is an amazing ecosystem. I'll also speak a little bit to the who and the where. We are the Marine Mammal Alliance Nantucket, and we function under the Provisional Stranding Agreement with the federal government. This is a federal contract with NOAA National Marine Fisheries Service. We work in the Greater Atlantic Regional Fisheries Office, which is known as GARFO, and that runs from Virginia to Maine. This agreement, quote, authorizes us under Section 112C of the Marine Mammal Protection Act to respond, transport, and collect samples from live and dead stranded marine mammals. Other than local law enforcement and state law enforcement, like the Mass Environmental Police and the U.S. Coast Guard, we're it. Man was the 16th team in this region, filling a huge gap. We are always among the top 3 teams when it comes to the numbers of animals that we've collected data on. And if you're speaking about HI, human interaction, we're even higher than that. This is the number of animals we've responded to so far this year. 280. North Atlantic gray seals being, of course, the most. We had 25 harp seals this year. Usually we have 1 or 2 a winter. They're ice seals. They were all the way down to Virginia, Maryland, Virginia area. And speculation is it's because there's no ice. So the youngsters are looking for territory. We go down the list: harbor seal, common dolphin, Atlantic white-sided dolphin, and bottlenose dolphin were animals from this year. This is an overview of where we've responded to. The legend at the bottom tells you the animals. But you just get an overview there of the fact that these animals are all around the island, including in the harbor, including in Pulpus Harbor. We had a harp seal on the ice last year. I'll break that down for you a little bit. There's the east end, Great Point. There's a major haul out. There's probably 800 to 1,000 seals now on Great Points at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service land. They're just starting to have their babies on Great Point. Last week we had the first reported newborn. There's probably half a dozen there now. It's an amazing area because of the fact that you've got the sound and the ocean pouring into each other. And that creates a great food chain for the animals that live there and for the fishermen that use it. Oh, the thing has stopped working. I'm using the arrow here. One more update are available. Remind me later. Yeah, I don't want an update like that, thank you. All right, let's try this again. Let's try it again. Oh, good. There's downtown this winter. You can see that we've got animals even in the downtown area. All the blue dots are harp seals. They were coming into the harbor because of the ice. There's a little yellow dot down there at the bottom. That was a little pup that hauled out in the guy's driveway behind Marine Home Center. We went down, we moved it, and brought it down to a sound beach and released it there. This is the West End, Matticat, Eel Point. Again, ocean sound, water moving back and forth, but also you're getting closer to Muskeget Island. And Muskeget Island is the largest rookery for North Atlantic gray seals in the lower 48. It's like Manhattan to the Bronx, or vice versa. Sable Island, Canada, is where these seals congregate in the largest numbers, but within a few days they can swim down here and haul out. So the moms come down and they have their babies on Muskeget. Right now, there's December 22nd. Those black dots are mostly moms, but there's little white dots that you can't quite see here. And those animals are happy as Larry. We only got out to, let me just go back for a minute. We only got out to Muskeget once this year, and I'll get into that in a minute. HI, I spoke about that at the top. HI entanglement. We had 23 animals entangled this year. We got our hands on 19 of them and disentangled all of them. Both of these ones included. However, that entanglement is like a slow cutting blade. This is what it gets to look like. Now this animal, we disentangled. I went back to it a week later, and that wound, which was 1.5 inches deep, had almost scabbed over. They're robust, tough little buggers. So if you can get to them, you can help them. This is an Atlantic white-sided dolphin. I'm assuming that vertical entanglement wound is what killed it down on Ladies Beach. This is 4 years ago. A humpback whale, young girl, 2 or 3 years old, 33 feet long. Those linear scars on her right fluke are from an entangled line. She got out of it. She also survived an orca attack. Those rake marks on her dorsal fin are from an orca grabbing her by the dorsal. We don't know what killed her. IFAW and Woods Hole came out and did a necropsy. Her belly was totally empty. So something was going on. This is Nantucket's biggest problem, proximity. Our beaches are open to people. They're open to vehicles, and I'll get into that later. But the upper left-hand photograph, Sconset. Imagine what happens if Dad stands up and his kid gets off his back and walks over to pet the puppy. Lower left, Cisco Beach, seal hauled out inside the flags. Lower right, Jetties Beach, right in front of community sailing. We put up the caution tape and signage and monitored the animal for half a day. Upper right, really interesting. That's July 27th, 2,000 people on the beach. One place where there was no people on the sand, in front of the lifeguard tower. That's where the little seal hauled out. He spent half a day there. Really good working with town, because town makes the phone call now, and we get people down there. I talked to a couple of hundred people on that day, just explaining what was going on. That's the signage that we use and that we put up. Those are 5 important bullet points. Pretty simple ones, really. They're wild animals, but give seals a break, and that refers specifically to Nantucket. Stay 150 feet away, it's a good guideline. But the law is don't change the animal's behavior. Keep pets on a leash. Massachusetts state law on Nantucket, we're real flexible. But if you've got a dog and a seal tumbling together, and dogs often want to do that, they do have diseases that they can shift back and forth. And don't swim with seals, and Greg will get into more of that later on. Yeah, thanks, Greg. Boat strike, haven't seen a lot of that, but on this little animal you can see the propeller marks on its abdomen, lower abdomen there, ventral side. This animal, because we don't have any facility out here, I followed it for 5 days, and because the wounds were through the blubber and into the body cavity, it did perish. Bummer. This is typical Nantucket. First of all, there's Washington Street on the upper left. Second of all, there's a Maserati on the beach. That's Surfside. My signage is up. There's a seal and a Maserati. The little seal on the bottom right, had just been tagged by Tufts University. It was laying in a tire track because that's where it wanted to be. Also, on the lower left, you see that's windage. They can get in there, they can hide out from the weather. That's where they want to be. We have to be very aware when we're driving on the beach that we're not going to run over an animal, and it has happened on Nantucket. And when I spoke to Noah, it had happened to nowhere else. They actually had to get a paper on such from New Zealand. Almost mentioned there was Washington Street in the upper left. We herded him back into the water with the help from the police department. Cetaceans, whales, dolphins, porpoise. North Atlantic right whale, upper left, I-14 came out and helped us out. It was the 18th animal that died in an ongoing UME with these critically endangered animals. That UME, unusual mortality event, is now at 30. The 20th mortality floated by Nantucket, and Mr. Blair Perkins actually went out and identified it and tracked it so that Coast Guard and IFAW could then do a necropsy on it. Lower left, a dead humpback whale 2 summers ago when we had the big whale event here for 6 weeks. On the last day, this little girl washed up. She was, again, it was a little young girl. She had stranded once on a sandbar, and then she washed up dead. Did a necropsy, sent the information off. She was the 50th mortality in this unusual mortality event. They're now up to 110 animals in the last 3 years on the East Coast in the Garfo region. Lots of stuff going on out there. On the right is a dwarf sperm whale, the smallest of the sperm whales, the perfect little Moby Dick. Massachusetts Environmental Police and I tried to get it back in. It was really ill. It died that night, and we buried it on the beach, but it was Christmas Day, so it was a beautiful Christmas day, so I had the ability to talk to a couple of hundred people who came down to look at the animal. The word got out, and they came down, and it was really good. We do all of our work on the beach. This is an Atlantic white-sided dolphin. Veterinarian Stephen St. Pierre is about to work on it. Animal control officer, police officer Susie Gale, who's on the team, is helping out. But as I say, we have no facility, so most of our work is done on the beach. Greg will be speaking to this, as I said. This is shark interactions. Sharks live here. Seals live here. Seals are their favorite food. The 2 animals left and bottom are pups that were hit by probably juvenile great whites and got away. And the one on the bottom probably was fine. In fact, I did see it healing up nicely. Don't know what happened to the one on the left. We looked for a rehab spot. We did get a rehab spot, and it died at National Marine Life Center. The one on the right is a full-grown adult male gray seal. That bite is about 24 to 26 inches across. That's an adult great white. That animal didn't survive. Muskegon again, just for the heck of it. Pupping season is right now. I zoomed in on a section of the beach just so you could see. There's 8 little seals there next to their moms, except for number 8, which was probably, it was an infant mortality. I don't know if it was a stillborn or not, but it was dead. Speaking of pups, okay, that's what they're like. When they're born, their mom weans them at 13 to 20 days. They're on their own. This one was right at that 2-week mark. This is right next to the White Elephant Hotel. The guy, property owner, called me up, said, hey, what's going on? There's this thing next to my boat. I went down there. I didn't know whether it was alive or dead. I got right next to it like you see in the photograph. It was sleeping. I saw it breathe, and I said, hey, Richard, let's go back to the road. And it woke up and looked at me like, what are you doing? Who are you? And we walked back up to the road. I was standing on Easton Street for about 6 minutes and talking to Richard, telling him about gray seals. Looked over his shoulder, and this is what I saw, and I hope that you can hear it. Because as I said, Are you my mommy? They don't know.
The mouse isn't working at once.
Oh my God.
You can't hear it, it's whimpering at me. It's literally whining at me, and it came up, I picked the animal up, I put a towel over its head, picked it up, brought it back down on the beach, it went, ah. As soon as I started rubbing its belly, it went, ah, thank you. Maybe you are my mommy. And, again, we would have brought it to National Marine Life Center, they had space. This was in January, it got dark at 4:15. I went back at first light the next day, and the animal had gone back into the water, I hope, for a happy life. All right, I will now hand off to the next speaker from WPI, unless there's any questions. I mean, we were supposed to ask for questions. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, over here.
Would you, I think the right approach is when you see an animal on the beach, not to touch it and call you. Is that right?
Correct, yeah. Remember that 150 feet is really hard to deal with on Nantucket? You walk around the corner of a sand dune and there's an animal there. So, you know, you're not going to get in trouble for actually making the phone call, taking a photograph, making the phone call, and kind of doing the right thing as best as you can. Okay, thanks guys. And Henry?
Okay. So, hello everyone. Is this place right? So I'm here to talk to you today about Moby. This is an ongoing project between a team of students from Worcester Polytechnic Institute, the Department of Public Works here on Nantucket, and the Remo Alliance Nantucket. So this is the student team that was involved in this project. Leonardo Go is a mechanical engineering major. Cameron LeBlanc is a biomedical engineering major. Evan Ryan is also a mechanical engineering major. And I, Henry Stodolnik, am a double major in computer science and in interactive media and game development. So I normally make games, but that's not what I'm here to talk to you today about. I'm here to talk about the issue of coastal litter. So this is a global problem, as we've discussed in previous presentations here. Man-made waste ends up out, especially plastics and fishing gear, ends up out in the oceans and pollutes the environment, causing environmental harm as well as harm to the wildlife that's there. And oftentimes ends up washing up back on the shore all over the world. And Nantucket is no exception to this. All these photos you see here are taken from Nantucket beaches, including these seals that are entangled in fishing gear. Although this is a huge problem with a very wide scope, people have been taking measures to address it, especially on the local scale. And one of the most interesting ways people have approached this is through functional art. So one of the first sculptures that was known to do this is this untitled sculpture commonly known as Yoshi the Fish. This one was created in India, and it serves as a waste receptacle. People can pick up litter they find on the beach and put it in the sculpture. It creates this striking image of a fish literally filled up with this debris. On a similar note, there's Tread Goldfish, which is a sculpture in the UK. It's designed to stiffly hold plastic bottles. And over here is a right whale sculpture that's part of a collection in the Golden Isles region of Georgia. And it's designed as a static display. So people don't actually fill it, but it still serves a similar purpose. So taking inspiration from projects like these, we've designed our own sculpture to go on Nantucket. This is a sculpture called Moby, and it's designed after a sperm. So there are a few different objectives the Moby project set out to accomplish. First and foremost, it aims to raise awareness about the issue of coastal litter. Human actions like littering result in what is known as slow violence. This is widespread and long-term damage done to the environment in ways that often aren't readily perceptible. Like, you drop a plastic bag in the ocean, you're not going to see the harm that it does until it's too far down the line. It also aims to reduce coastal litter locally by providing a receptacle for people to dispose of stuff. And it also aims to help change people's behavior too. It accompanying the sculpture is signage that helps helps spread its message further and encourage people to take in their own lives more action against it, in both cleaning up litter they find and in reducing their own waste output. And hopefully it can result in long-term change, making people adopt healthier habits in the environment. Location we chose for this sculpture is the parking lot of Surfside Beach. So you can see where it would go approximately here. So we chose the location for several different reasons. For one, it's a very popular beach here on Nantucket, which means that this would be a great opportunity for this to get a lot of exposure and for people to see this, and which will maximize its effectiveness. It also is on the southern shore of Nantucket, which tends to accumulate more litter overall, so that'll be more effective and have a greater impact there. On top of this, it's also in a spot that's very readily accessible to the DPW when they come to service it and empty it, so it's just an all-around really good location for this. You also notice in the middle it's got its wooden section. This is because the body of the whale is made out of enclosures similar to the ones the DPW already has. Each of these contains 2 waste barrels, like one for holding metal and one for holding plastic, for example. And they're designed to be a more aesthetically pleasing way to show them while housing them and protecting them from the environment and from wild animals. We're taking this a step further by incorporating them into the sculpture itself. So these are some iterations of the design process of the sculpture. It started off, we were talking about making a metal one similar to the ones we previously showed. And then we came up with a hybrid design once we were introduced to the enclosures, and we continued iterating on that. So here's a more detailed breakdown of Moby. It would be about 33 feet long in total. The head section would be made out of metal, and this is the part that would function as a litter receptacle. The slots on the side are where people would put litter in, and it gets collected in these 3 barrels inside. And then those can be readily removed by the DPW and easily serviced. Also, if you look at it from the front view, like you've got the barrels here, on the sides of them, you've got these static enclosures of litter. And so this will create the image of the whale being filled up with litter. And then, like I said before, the body is made out of 4 of these wooden enclosures, so there's a total of 8 waste barrels inside there, covering all the different main waste streams. And then over here, and the tail is another metal section, and this is a static display of litter. People aren't actively interacting with someone, but it is still filled up to preserve that image. And lastly, the flukes of the tail actually serves the shelter for a bus stop. So, some more specific details about the sculpture. It will be primarily constructed and built by the artist Billy Sherry. He should be somewhere around here. Yes. Hello! The skeleton of the sculpture is going to be made out of steel flat or round stock, and then it'll have a skin of wire steel mesh around it. The flukes will have a sheet metal to ensure that they satisfactorily serve as a shelter against the rain and against the sun. And the body will be made out of wood. We also specifically recommended that this metal used be stainless steel, as that will be low maintenance and won't rust. And also we've identified a company in Worcester, Massachusetts called Wirebed Inc. that would be able to, is willing to provide materials for this project. And also the overall dimensions of it, like I said, is about 33 feet long. The body is about 6 feet wide and 6 feet tall. And then the fluke would be about 7.5 feet tall and 10 feet wide. So in addition to the sculpture itself, there's also signage that accompanies it and helps improve its message. So there's 2 types. First, there's instructional signage, which explains how people are supposed to use the sculpture. This is an example of the type that would go on the sides of the head. It shows you where to put beach litter up in the slots, and it also tells you to put stuff that's not supposed to go inside it in the body instead. Specifically, it's going to be holding non-recyclable, non-compostable stuff in the head. Because otherwise, like if it's a plastic bottle, for example, that you can recycle, and that's better to dispose of properly. The other type of signage is the informational sign. This is a much larger sign that's going underneath the tail in ready view of the bus stop. And I'm not going to read everything it has here because there's quite a lot, but there's 4 key things it talks about. It talks about the issue of coastal litter. It talks about the sculpture and what it's trying to do. It talks about ways that people can get involved in their own lives to help reduce the issue. And it also encourages people to engage with the sculpture and spread awareness of it and its message over social media. Now, Moby is not yet constructed, but my team designed the sculpture over the course of the past 2 months, and now it will plan to be installed in summer 2020, and it will be constructed in the time between them. And once it's installed, there are future plans for it. In addition to serving as a litter receptacle and raising awareness, it will also be a seasonally displayed sculpture, which means that it can be taken down in sections for the winter months when it won't be as readily used, and it also, in the case of dangerous weather occurring, it can also be removed for that. This project is a great opportunity to get local students also involved. There's a number of ways this can be done. They could be creating posters and social media things to promote the sculpture and its message. They can also be used, they can also help with collecting litter to stock up the static displays. And if this project proves to be a success, more sculptures similar to it could be placed around the island. There could be more sperm whales creating Moby's pod, or they could be other sculptures based on iconic wildlife like gray seals. And these could be designed or at least named by students. Now, how can you help with this? Well, one main way is by supporting Moby's message. If you go out to the beach, make sure that you don't leave a trace, and if you find litter, make sure to clean it up too, if you can. And also, it's important to reduce your own waste output. Make sure you're mindful about how you're using waste, especially plastics, and reuse things when you can. And you can also help by donating to the project through the MMAF. Any donations received this way will help pay for materials, construction, and potentially promoting the sculpture and its message. And that's all I have. Thank you for your time. Any questions?
Does Moby have a hashtag yet?
Yes. I'm not certain what the final one is. We'll see. They'll be on the signage and stuff.
Okay.
Yes, we proposed several. We don't know exactly which ones are taken.
All right.
Anyone else? All right, thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is so exciting to see so many people here on this wonderful, dreary, wonderful Nantucket day. What's Nantucket without a day like today, right? I'm Vicki Spruill, and I am the very proud CEO at the New England Aquarium in Boston. I'm just a little over a year into my role there, moving to Boston from Washington, D.C., but I've been coming to Nantucket for over 35 years. I am not a year-rounder, but I actually prefer it off-season, but I've been here for about 10 days, and this is my actually favorite time to come. So I feel like I am home, and getting here from Boston is a heck of a lot easier than it was getting from Washington, D.C., so you're going to see more of me. And I heard about the Great Whale event, and it actually had a part in why I came to the New England Aquarium. So in that summer of 2018, I had gotten a call from the search firm who was looking to find somebody to run the aquarium. And I was debating, I'd lived in DC for 35 years, what should I do, what should I do? And over the course of about 5 days on the beach in Tom Nevers, I saw that magnificent pod of whales, and a lot of you here, how many of you were lucky enough to see those animals? It was amazing. Local islanders had lived here their entire lives and had never seen that kind of concentration of whales. Anyway, I thought it was a sign, and it's a big part of why I took the job. So I started about 6 months after that amazing sighting. And here we are now at the New England Aquarium in Boston, celebrating our 50th anniversary. We're the first modern aquarium in the country. How many of you have visited us in Boston? Yes! Oh, I love that. Come often. I have to recognize one of my trustees. Did you see all those hands, Duncan? Duncan Richardson and his wife, Liz. That's amazing. Thank you all for your support. And part of why I'm here is I want to build stronger connections and partnerships between the work that we're doing and all of the great work that you're hearing about today on this magical island. So for the past 50 years, we've been delighting our visitors. We are very fortunate to have almost 1.5 million visitors a year come through our doors in Boston. And we've been doing rigorous science conservation and research all that same time. And that's the part that people don't know as much about us. Not everyone knows about our conservation science. Our research and science portfolio lives in something that's been called now the Anderson Cabot Center for Ocean Life. We felt it was important that we really designated a scientific center for the work that we have been doing over these 50 years. And the center's sole purpose is to find solutions to ocean threats, both in our own backyard, like here, and beyond around the globe. Many of you, I'm sure, have read the recent report from the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and it sounded an alarm in absolutely no uncertain terms that the time for action to protect our ocean is now. We can't sit by the sidelines, and you see it differently and up close and personal in Nantucket every day. For decades, our dear ocean has been serving as a buffer for climate change, absorbing much of the excess carbon we're producing, and it's been warming rapidly as a result. But we all know that the ocean has its limits too. Climate change, overfishing, pollution, and other industrial activities are causing irrevocable loss to the ocean's habitat and to its biodiversity. And without dramatic action, and some say even within the next decade, impacts will only get much more severe. From the seafood we eat, to those beautiful beaches you saw that we cherish and love to enjoy, to the ocean animals we love, and from increases in sea level rise to even more dramatic weather patterns. You all know this. You wouldn't have come to this event if you didn't know it. I feel a little bit like I'm preaching to the choir. Maybe you read that haunting Globe article that was published back in September about the threats to the Cape and the islands, how our stretch of ocean is warming faster than nearly anywhere else in the world, how the beaches on the outer Cape lose an average of about 3 feet of shoreline a year, and how the number of commercial fishermen have dropped precipitously. It went on and on and on. It was a very hard read, but if you've not seen it, I would encourage you to find it. So the world needs the conservation work that so many of you in this room are doing now more than ever, and I think that's why we're here today on this rainy afternoon. We know more than anyone about the challenges facing the ocean, and we know that they're too big and they're too complex for any one of us or even any one of the organizations that you're hearing about today to handle alone. And so that's why we know that if we're going to solve some of these complex problems, we've got to work in partnership. So I'm here offering a personal commitment and a professional commitment to work more closely with many of the organizations and others that we're hearing about today. We work in partnership with folks right on the ground because all conservation is local. And sometimes those individuals are scientists who monitor marine mammal populations and ecosystems. Sometimes they're fishermen watching their tried and true fishing grounds dry up. Sometimes it's different other kinds of industries struggling with the unintended consequences of their work. And as we are pursuing these solutions, these technical and scientific solutions, we're innovating new technologies, we're trying to educate individuals along the way, and we're advocating to create policy change. For example, we're doing also a lot of great work around the critically endangered right whale. We maintain the National Right Whale Catalog, we host the annual Right Whale Consortium, and we publish the annual Right Whale Report Card. We spend every summer on the northern Maine coast monitoring right whales. And you may have heard the first right whale calf was spotted last week. That's a really promising start to the calving season, given that there were no right whales born in 2018. We're also working to safeguard marine mammals, other whales, sharks, sea turtles, the seals, the rays, and more. We have a particular emphasis right now on sea turtles that get cold stunned as they swim further north. We have a very robust turtle rescue hospital in Quincy, Massachusetts. And like the groups working on conservation issues on island, we are seeing human activities generating more and more threats to marine mammals, whether that's from vessel strikes, from the fishing gear entanglements you've already seen, ocean noise, believe it or not, it's really noisy under the ocean, and pollution of all kinds, just to name a few of the problems. We've been working with the oil industry over the many years that we've been around to move shipping lanes and the fishing industry on adopting more sustainable practices, and with fishermen to create pingers, as just one example, that alert harbor marine mammals to the presence of nets. And we're currently partnering with Maine lobstermen to develop a ropeless lobster trap. We're also trying to be proactive, and Boston is the hub of technology these days, and we recently announced a new Venture Fellows program with an organization called See Ahead to foster early stage sustainable blue tech ocean projects. But there's so much more we all need to be doing to stop climate change. And that's why we're trying to set an example in our own building, and it's so reassuring to hear about all of the great work that you're doing around plastics and microplastics in particular. As well as inspiring and educating the people who come to see our exhibits, we have to be walking our own talk and our own facility. So this year, and this is a little surprise maybe to some of you, we eliminated single-use plastics in favor of recyclable, compostable, and reusable materials in our own Harbor View Cafe. It was really hard to do. We had commitments with lots and lots of vendors, and we had to work through all of that. We also changed our composting vendor to one that could guarantee that our eco products, all of our compostable plates and spoons and utensils, would be fully composted. And our sustainability commitment has allowed us to tap into larger efforts. You heard about the straw campaign we did here. We did a similar one. The First Step, which is a national campaign to skip the straw that you don't need. And we've also engaged with the City of Boston in producing a video around their Zero Waste Boston initiative. And we also endorsed the statewide plastic ban legislation, an issue I know that you're working on here, so kudos to you for leading the charge at the local level. This is just such a critical moment for the ocean, and marine ecosystems and the humans that rely on them are at risk. There's just no other way to say it. We need many hands, we need many minds, and we need the resources to support all of it. After all, every other breath we take comes from the ocean. I actually can't think of any issue that any of us could be engaged in that's more fundamental than that. And I'm here in hopes that we can really forge stronger partnerships with all of you here. So thank you so much. And come back and visit us. Let me know when you're in Boston.